employers where we're at. As I mentioned before, do this if we don't have employers. And some employers are going to be ready to jump right in and get started, even though they probably don't even really know what we're asking them to do yet. Marty Cullen, who was in another session with Perfect Plumbing, Heating, and Air, he just kind of jumped in and started signing stuff, and just now is realizing what he signed, and he's super glad that he did. And you're going to have other employers that just aren't ready yet to go down that road. So then the way to kind of work with them is to offer other work-based learning opportunities. Can you come offer someone to come in and be a guest speaker in a classroom? Then can we take students to your your actual site to do a site tour? What if you offer some job shadow opportunities for students? And then as you build and get to know your students and you as well, they're more likely to then go to that next level. All right, let's hire a student on either an internship or an apprenticeship level. Emmanuel, if you'll go to that next slide. So what you're seeing here is this has been developed by the Idaho Workforce Development Council and Idaho Workforce Council, I should say. And there's 3 phases as they kind of have it there for work-based learning. You know, you have the learning about work. So those are things like, as I mentioned, career counseling, investigating other pathways, industry speakers, guest speakers, those types of things, to engaging with employers through site tours, potentially maybe some job shadows. Then that learning through work is internships, pre-apprenticeships, co-ops. We won't talk about that a whole lot. That was but someone asked that question in the chat on the side. If we have time, we can talk a little bit more about differences between an apprenticeship and an internship and a co-op. And then finally, that highest level is that learning at work. And that's what we're shooting for, is we want to give students an opportunity to learn through work. You're meeting multiple needs when you hire a student, work, and develop a registered apprenticeship program. With that, what I would say is if we could go to the next slide, and I'll talk about, basically, this is our ideal model at DTEC. So we're trying to pilot this on a fairly large scale for the state, and we're always tweaking it. But as things come up, our idea is to get it going here at DTEC, but the goal is to spread this throughout the state with apprenticeship. And it doesn't, as I mentioned before, it doesn't have to be at a CTE high school. It can be your local high school. Whatever education institution you have, your local community college, they're all available to help create this apprenticeship model. So what you're looking at here, and this again is the ideal, students can jump into it at any place, but ideally our students come to us as 10th graders. If they come their first year, they're eligible to come out to DTEC. We're a Boise School District is a 10 through 12 high school. So K through 9, they're just learning about work. They're doing career exploration activities. You know, the state is doing a good job, especially CT, is trying to work more career exploration activities and classes into the middle school, especially, and hopefully down on into the high schools, or I mean, the elementary schools. There's the teacher extern program where teachers go out and over the summer work with employers to learn about what they do in their jobs and how they can take those jobs and those experiences back into the classroom. So a student, let's use the example of diesel right now. We're working with an employer just yesterday, helping them get signed up to be our first registered apprenticeship for diesel, heavy duty diesel. That's one of our programs here. So let's say we have a student that comes as a 10th grader. They've chosen heavy duty diesel. We kind of consider that our pre-apprenticeship. That first year is just basically they're working on skill building, learning about the trade or the program, whether it's a trade or a non-traditional apprenticeship, whatever the program is, they're learning more about that. They're starting to engage in some basic activities, maybe some site tours, things like that. We offer workshops where we have our students, every student develops a resume. We have interview workshops that they will need to go through. And then we start by the spring looking to place them in some job shadows, where it may be just a one-day job shadow, or it could be a week-long job shadow where they actually either miss our class or they may miss the whole day, all of school, to spend the entire day with the employer looking at what it's like to be in that business and in this profession. If things go well, they come back in their junior year, and that's really when we look to start their apprenticeship. They're continuing their skill development in the fall. We're really starting to engage them with employers. We're developing a screening for apprentices to make sure, basically it's more of a checklist. It's not so much an application. I'm going to change the verbiage on that. Basically a checklist to make sure they're ready, because they have to demonstrate readiness. Because one of the selling points of apprenticeship and STRAP that we talk to our employers about is you're getting a high level of pre-screening before we ever send a student out to them. So if we don't think they're going to be a good fit as an apprentice right away, we're never going to send them to you for you to interview. So not only are we screening them, eventually you will interview them as well. If it's a good fit, usually we like to do a job shadow during that time, a week-long job shadow. So it's almost like a running interview where they get to experience working in your company, as well as you get to interview them over a long term, over usually typically a week potentially, but at least a couple days. And to make sure it's a good fit on both ends. It's a good fit for the employer and also a good fit for the student. Because in the end, our main interests lie in what's best for the student. So we want it to be a good fit. If it's a good fit for both parties, they hire them. And in that spring, traditionally, they'll work anywhere from 5 to 10 hours a week, typically after school. But we've also set up where they can, with our juniors and seniors, our upper level classes, we try to schedule towards the end of the day, our last block of the day. So instead of coming to DTEC, they can go straight to work and get a few more hours in. All of that's in conjunction, trying to prepare them for full-time work for you, for an employer over the summer before their senior year. So they work up to full-time with that employer over the summer, and then they come back to DTEC in the fall of their senior year, continuing some skill development, but really they're working more than they're coming to DTEC. They're working more like 10 to 20 hours a week, maybe only coming to DTEC 1 or 2 days. We're also developing dual enrollment or concurrent enrollment, dual credit opportunities for students. Their senior year, they have lots of opportunities in almost every one of our programs to earn high-level industry certifications. Then they graduate from high school. Here's one of the keys to STRAP is, so we can't get a student going under an apprenticeship under the STRAP and they're like, man, I'm making great money. I love this. I'm going to drop out of high school. In order to be an apprentice under the STRAP, they have to graduate from high school. If they don't graduate from high school, that apprenticeship stops. So that's another way of, in essence, helping our go-on rate. It's already been great with CTE anyways. We see our students going on at a much higher rate to some type of post-secondary training, but they have to graduate from high school. Once they graduate, the apprenticeship doesn't end. It's going to transition, and they're going to have to go on to some kind of post-secondary training, as well as now they're a full-time employee if they're able to and work out their schedules with that employer, finishing their apprenticeship. And the advantage is, in the end, they earn this nationally recognized industry credential. And the cool thing about this, and why we stress, so for us, we won't send a student out for an apprenticeship unless it's a registered program. And the reason why is because of the ability to earn that nationally recognized industry credential. It's from the Department of Labor, and it's good nationwide in every state. And so portability is a huge piece for us, a bonus for us as we're looking out for best interests of students, because the students don't know if they're going to stay in Idaho. You know, the whole goal of this is to keep Idaho, as the governor says, keep Idaho talent in Idaho, but some kids may choose to go to school in a different state, or family moves, or a job opportunity in another state. Because it's a nationally recognized apprenticeship through the Department of Labor, that apprenticeship picks up and goes with them to wherever employer they work with in another state, as long as they're a registered program as well. If it's not a registered program, it's kind of at the whim of the employer whether or not they'll count that, but it wouldn't be under the Department of Labor anymore. So that's the advantage of sticking with registered programs or registered employers, is that portability piece. So that in a nutshell is kind of what we're looking at. Again, depending on students, as this is brand new, this is the first year that just this spring we started sending out apprentices, and we have 2 companies now that have already seen value in it, and they've hired a second apprentice. The first one has worked out great, and so they've already picked up a second apprentice. And then we're developing one for diesel now. Our main concentration in the beginning, they say start small, and I didn't listen. I kind of tried to take a big chunk out of it. We're mainly concentrating on our HVAC, plumbing, and electrical. Cybersecurity is our non-traditional apprenticeship, and then diesel and precision machining. But we'll take whatever employer, if an employer in any of our other program related to any of our other programs wants to start an apprenticeship, we're not going to say no, but we're kind of really focusing a lot of effort in those 5 areas. And as we build it out and build more success stories, then employers are more likely to, they'll hear, or they can call those other employers that have already taken on apprentices and say, hey, how's it working for you guys? The biggest hurdle for schools is going to be working with employers and their concerns about liability insurance. That is the #1 thing that I hear, is we can't do that because of liability. The great thing about the strap is that it is it comes with that waiver from the Federal Department of Labor, allowing 16 and 17-year-olds to work in what are considered hazardous occupations. There are some limitations, and there has to be that 1 apprentice to 1 journey person ratio. But in general, they can do most of the things that the other employees can do. And so it kind of takes that liability off the table a little bit. What you have to do you have to push your employers in, because their initial response is going to be, oh, we can't hire if they're not 18. Have you asked your HR department? Is your first question to them. And if they said yes, then ask if their HR department has actually asked their insurance carrier, and make sure they explain that strap. Because once they do that, we found that the companies that this is important to them, they stress that to their insurance carrier, and the insurance carrier is like, all right, no problem. We've had that on multiple occasions now with a couple of our employers where they just pushed it a little bit, and when they explained the strap waiver, the insurance company had no problem with it. And then boom, now they're taking multiple apprentices from us. So if we could go to the next slide, and I'll talk just a little bit more, and then I'll turn it over to Chet. So how the next steps on our end is really identify potential opportunity, job shadow, site tour opportunities for your students. I'm focusing as if everybody's more focused on the school side of things, that you're trying to build an apprenticeship strap program at your local school, or how you can partner with a school. Collaborate with DTEC or your local high school and the Department of Labor to become a registered program, because that's the key. That's where that portability and that nationally recognized credential comes about. Then we identify programs, positions, and you develop standards. The great thing for the employers, there's so much flexibility. They really get to design the apprenticeship and what those standards are and how the length. Is it a time-based apprenticeship? Is it a competency-based, or is it a hybrid? And if that's getting deep into the logistics of apprenticeship, but there's a lot of flexibility. Some people tend to think, with the Department of Labor, it's going to be, there's lots of regulations and there's not much flexibility. And yes, there are some regulations, but there's tons of flexibility. You get, as the employer, get to drive what that apprenticeship looks like. And then once that employer is registered, then they can begin hiring your students under the strap. Again, it's going to take time. I went and visited CareerWise out of Colorado, Denver, Colorado. They're a big national organization that's really gone all in on youth apprenticeship as a state. And the one message that they really stressed is it does take time. We've been going at it a year and a half. It took a year and a half to get our first apprentice actually signed and going. But now once it's now that we've kind of started it, kind of broke the seal, kicked the door down, it's just going to expand from there. So really the last thing, and then we'll get into more question and answer, is really where I'll transition to Chet, is we have to have those employers. And so Chet's going to give a great example of how an employer actually came to the school district saying, we have a need. How can we partner to build and meet this need? So Chet, take it away.
There we go. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I had the great opportunity. I've been working with apprenticeships now since 2007. The state sent me to some training in San Francisco where I got my feet wet, but we all know that 2007 was a great time to discuss apprenticeships because in 2008 we had the Great Recession. So with that Great Recession, unfortunately, apprenticeships went in the tank. And now we've reached another point where employers are faced with we call it the silver tsunami. The silver tsunami is the age of retirement. So employers are starting to look at the concern of losing their skilled workforce and what are they going to do as these individuals start retiring? These individuals that are starting to retire also take with them some skills that they have learned while they're on the job, not just necessarily book learning or related learning, but they have skills and expertise that is very valuable. So how are the employers going to create a workforce, a pipeline workforce, and retain some of this knowledge that the tenured employees have gained without losing it? Well, that program is through the apprenticeship program. Now, in our local area, I service the south central Idaho area, primarily Minidoka and Cassia counties. For those of you that are not familiar with this part of the state, we're nestled down in between Twin Falls and Pocatello in the city of Burley, Idaho, and Rupert, Idaho. Those are the two major cities in the two counties. And our area is predominantly agriculture, but we also have a lot of manufacturing. In the manufacturing, we have the McCain Foods operation, which processes potatoes, as well as High Desert Milk, which processes dairy. They do dehydrated milk as well as butter. These two companies came to me, and we've been addressing for multiple months. For a long period of time, we talked about we're losing people. We're losing a community. Kids don't want to stay in rural Idaho. That's a challenge that we've had. They want to move away. They want to go to college, which is great. We want them to do that as well. But there's also a group of individuals, and we've talked about that earlier in the presentation today. What about those individuals that are leaving the area? But what about those individuals who are not leaving the area? What are we doing for them? How are we helping them? They potentially have skills that can be used in our food processing facilities and help us grow and help us continue to be successful. McCain Foods, High Desert Milk came to me, both these companies, along with Fabrical. Fabrical's a newer company that they manufacture and make storage containers for Chobani yogurt, and they also to-go cartons for restaurants. The three of those companies came to me and said, here's the deal. We want to have an apprenticeship program. We want it to be in the high school, but we don't want it to be at Burley High School, and we don't want it to be at Minico High School solely. We want these schools to come together to create one program, and we'll fund it. Not only will we help fund it, we'll hire the students and give them work opportunities. So that's where the great challenge began. Those of you working with education understand that school districts and barriers and potential challenges that you have in working with school districts. Minidoka and Cassia School District are known across the state for a great rivalry and great challenges that exist with them. Over the next 3 years, we created a program that did not exist. Earlier in the presentation, they talked about the number of apprenticeship programs that existed already. There was a non-existent program for the machine operator apprenticeship. It was one that we developed from scratch. So for the next 3 years, we partnered with industry, education, and the College of Southern Idaho to come up with a curriculum to get approval and to make it work. This program is now in its 3rd year, and it's been very successful. In fact, we've been able to make placements. As far as completion rates, we are scheduled to have our first student fully completed with the apprenticeship this fall. We actually will have 2 of them that will finish this fall and receive the full certification. They've completed the 2 years of classroom training as well as the 2,000 hours of on-the-job training. Classroom training or related training, this is what it consists of. Because we had 2 different school districts that work on different school schedules, Minidoka School District was on a trimester basis, Cassia School District was on a semester basis. We had to find a time frame that would work for both. So these classes were held at 7 o'clock in the morning at a central location. Students had to go through an application process. They completed the applications, submitted them to me at the Department of Labor. I sent them out to the employers. The companies reviewed them, and then they accepted whomever they wanted from those applications to participate in the program. To date, anybody that applied has been accepted into the program. The students then have to prove their value during the classroom training. So the classroom training starts typically in November and runs through May, the end of the school year. Classroom goes from 7 a.m. to 7:55 a.m. 2 days a week, 1 week, 3 days the next week. So it alternates weeks. We do the alternating weeks. That way the students who are in the second year of classroom training, they go on the opposite days or opposite time frames of the rest of the students. So this program, when we first started it, we started it with 20 students. We graduated 8. Of the 8 students, 4 of them went to work. 4 doesn't seem like a very high number. It was a success for us. We took it as a success because it at least gave these kids insight to what the future held. The next year, those 4 students came back, took the second year of classroom training. We also started another group. The next group had 16 students. Of the 16 students that started first year, 13 of them completed. We ended up in a challenge here. We had 4 students coming back to work for companies. I guess I should back up. The students go to work through the summer for either McCain Foods or High Desert Milk. Fabri-Kal unfortunately went through a hiring freeze where they could not place the students. So we had 2 companies still sponsoring students. All the students were placed the first year. Second year, we had 13 students complete. The companies hired back the students that they had previous years. Then we had to try to find a place for 13 students. Unfortunately, we were only able to place 10. That was just because of the number of students. We didn't have enough businesses. So we went out on a recruiting mission this last year, and we recruited some additional companies. We brought on board PCA, which is Packaging Corporation of America. They manufactured cardboard boxes. And then we also recruited Idaho Milk Products out of Jerome. With this, we've been able to, this year we have placed 8 students as of to date. 10 were offered positions, but we have some challenges, and I'm going to talk just briefly about those challenges that we encompassed were, number 1, the collaboration of the school districts, trying to get the school districts to work together, and then approving the curriculum. The second was the age requirements. Manufacturing typically requires you to be 18. We've been able to get past that and get students to start at 16 through the strap. However, even with that approval, we did have one company, the Packaging Corporation of America, that still will not hire them unless they're 18. We consented to at least let them hire 1 individual because we want them to get their feet wet and understand what the apprenticeship program is. By having a good experience this year, hopefully they'll have a better experience and we'll be able to get them to hire younger students next year or in the years to come. The next was the starting time of the class. I kind of touched on that, where we have 2 different school districts, 2 different barrel schedules or semester schedules. We were finally able to come up with that. Funding the program, we were able to apply for a Workforce Development Training Fund grant where we received $95,000 with a 100% match from businesses, and that funds the teacher who is teaching the class. Our teacher, who comes from industry, he went through the proper certification channels and is now a certified instructor for the state of Idaho, and he has the certifications that he needs. The last challenge is Idaho Milk Products came on. They offered several positions to several students, but the commuting distance was a challenge. Jerome is approximately 40 miles from Burley. Now, in our area, we don't have to deal with traffic. Traffic's not the problem. It's just the freeway. So you get on the freeway and you can be there in Jerome in about 40 minutes. It's all drive time. And we have some parents who were concerned about their 17-year-olds commuting back and forth to Jerome, which so our challenge right now is we've got to get some more industry partners on board, but we're also looking to expand this machine operator program. Idaho Milk Products is on board and would like to expand it through the Jerome school districts as well. So the driver behind our apprenticeship was industry. We have to have industry presence. You have to have a company willing to hire these students. Without the industry, without a place of employment, these programs are not successful. The wages these students are getting are unbelievable. The students have been hired at High Desert Milk and McCain Foods and Packaging Corporation of America. The salary for these students is anywhere from $13 to $18 per hour. We're talking juniors and seniors in high school that are being paid $13 to $18 per hour. Once they complete, the wage goes up. Now, I do have to say that this year we only offered this, the first 2 years we only offered this to juniors and seniors. We had a young sophomore girl last year who begged and pleaded, and we finally consented to let her join as a sophomore. And she was not offered an initial position this year, but she was one of our standout students all through the school year last year. At first, she was not offered a position, but she just sent me an email this morning. She's now received a job offer. She starts on the 26th with McCain Foods. She's ecstatic. She's going to be making $15 an hour as a sophomore, just completing her sophomore, going into her junior year of high school. So it's exciting times. These are exciting things. I'm happy to visit with you and share you some of our great successes as well as some of the trials that we've gone through. That's what's neat about these workshops, is we can share what our growing pains were to try to help you avoid having to go through those growing pains as well. But at the same time, as we share those successes, it helps build up the program and helps us prepare for what we can do in the future as well. And most of all, I'm passionate about apprenticeships. I'm passionate about on-the-job learning. I myself, I do not have a college degree. Training, on the job learning, and I view its value. I view the success that it comes through that as well. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Sean, and we can open it up to questions.
All right, thank you, Chet. And that's really the accelerating the process. Where Chet, even before us at DTEC, they really kind of started to pave the ground. They were the first to do this. And then the things that I've learned through PIA and JFF, that's how this came about, was some connections. I applied for a grant, and then through CareerWise, learning from them. It took CareerWise 5 years to get going. We have apprentices in a year and a half. Hopefully with your school districts, as we've hit a lot of these bumps in the road, we can help you avoid some of those and accelerate your process of getting your students out into apprenticeship even faster. Because really, back to that story I shared real quickly, students want to work. Many of them have to work to help support their families, but they'd rather work in what they're interested in, and they're coming to us in these programs. They want to work in those fields, and so we need employers to give them a chance. I noticed on the chat, or on the participants, that Greg Backus is on. He's the training director for the Idaho Sheet Metal Workers Union. They were the first to take a chance on, there he is. They were the first to take a chance on hiring one of our students, and now they've just signed a second one as well. I don't know if you'd like to add anything real quick, Greg.
Right now, not really, but it's a fantastic program. When they do get on, they're actually getting retirement benefits as they start, even as a strap student. So they're making some pretty good wages as a strap student, and my employers are happy. We're happy with them. It's been a great program.
Great. Well, thank you, Greg. I see there was a question in the chat here. I'm with Idaho Job Corps, an alternative program for students who have not been successful with traditional high school education programs or who need additional training after high school. Many received their GED. I was hoping to find out how we might be able to connect these students who are in various vocational training programs to different apprenticeship programs, but it sounds like this may be geared more to traditional high school. No, it does not. It's not geared toward traditional high school. So you can be the conduit to get those students. The key that you need is the employer. We can work with you to help find employers for different areas. So what I would say is maybe do some needs assessment with your students on what are some career interests, and then go out and cold call or work with the Idaho Department of Labor. They're your best resource, to maybe they can help you find and connect with an employer and help them build out a registered program. Really, all it takes is, what we handle is there's two pieces. There's the on-the-job experience, and then there's the related training as well. And so DTEC, we are the high school, whatever school what they're connected with. You are a part of the related training. The employer also can offer the related training as well. So no, it's definitely an option for different vocational training program. It would be a great option. and really is a life changer. Like Greg said, I mean, these kids, and Chet said as well, these kids are earning great wages. They're already, well, they'll soon in a couple of years vest in retirement, 401s. It's definitely an opportunity for your students to really get a leg up who maybe haven't had that opportunity before. So I would say, Courtney, yes, go for that. Connect with the Department of Labor. Gina and her team, Emmanuel, will bring up their contact info at the end of this, or feel free to reach out to me and we can chat more on what's that like. Are there other questions out there? How to either connect with a school, or if you're with a school, how do you get started?
Sean, I'd just like to reiterate too that along with the Idaho Department of Labor, we have great resources, but you also have your local chambers of commerce. You have your industry partnership groups. I know manufacturing alliances. Those are great resources to go and visit with. Even your Seroptimus or your Lions clubs. Those are great resources. You don't have to do all the footwork from the beginning. Utilize resources that are already there. The people that are there will help you get your program started, and that's what we've been able to do and created a great value in, and is the partnerships and the agreements that we have together.
Another great one, Chet, just reminded me of the first time I met Chet. We were at an Economic Development Association meeting, and so that's another great avenue, is with your local Economic Development Association. And then there's SWEMA, you mentioned Southwest Idaho Manufacturing Association. So there's a lot of different avenues, as Chet said, to try to engage with employers. That's going to be the hardest part, really, is getting employers to come on. But once that ball gets rolling, it starts to get some momentum. There's a little bit of a learning curve in terms of all the nuances of apprenticeship. But once you kind of get the gist of it, and there was a question in the chat in the main session about, isn't it very time consuming to become a registered program? And in the past, maybe, and there for a while, Idaho, there was kind of a vacuum a little bit. Now with Gina and her team and Bob Snyder with the federal level for Idaho, it's very streamlined, and they can get an employer up and being a registered program within a couple weeks. So it's really become a lot easier to develop those. So are there other questions out there?
Another comment, if there's not any other questions, another comment that I have is, it's really good to work with your community partners to create listening sessions. So as you do your, for example, the Cassia School District, they have quarterly meetings where the technical instruction teachers, and I can't remember the correct terminology, I apologize, but they do their technical advisory committees. So they bring the advisory committees in, and we have done multiple listening sessions where we invite a panel of employers to come in, and the panel of employers will let us know what keeps them awake at night, and we listen to what they're saying. As we listen to what they're saying and hone in, identify that low-hanging fruit per se, identify the short or easiest methods that we could utilize and set up an apprenticeship program. In a sense, that's kind of how our machine operator apprenticeship program started here. I was in a meeting with Jeff McRae, who's the plant manager, and he also sits on the state workforce board with Wendy Sechrist. Jeff McRae was sitting in a meeting with me, and they were talking about apprenticeship, and I said, hey, Jeff, what about doing an electronics apprenticeship at McCain Foods? He said, we don't need that. We need a machine operator. And we continued on. And then they came up and they said, how about a mechanical? And I said, well, you've got a maintenance program. How can we increase that? And he says, you're not listening to me. I said, we need a machine operator apprenticeship program. And it took about 3 times before it finally dawned on me, machine operator apprenticeship program. Because at times we're so busy trying to find a solution. But if we would sit back and wait for a minute, do a listening session with the employers, let them tell us what we're looking for. Let them be that guide and tell us how to go about it or how to approach it. That a lot of times will bring their involvement and their interest more to the top of the table.
Yeah, agreed. You know, one of the things that I think you're going to see in the next 5 years is this work-based learning, and especially apprenticeship I talked about as that highest level. This is the future of education. Students want to be connected. They want to connect what they're learning in the classroom to real world application, and there's nothing better than apprenticeship to do that. And that's one of the differences between an apprenticeship and an internship, for example. An internship is a short term, maybe they'll take you on for a few months. It's usually paid, hopefully, but there's no long-term commitment, and there's no connection necessarily to the classroom. Whereas with an apprenticeship, there's a direct connection between the employer and the classroom and what's happening, and there's constant communication. It's a long-term investment by the employer, where the goal is this student will eventually be a journey person at that company in that profession. So I think you're going to just see more and more of this. I noticed there was a senator on the chat in the main session asking questions about, do we need to make some changes, to education and graduation requirements. I think you're going to see a lot of that happening. It happened in Colorado, and it's just exploded. And I think, Idaho's ripe for the same thing, to solve some of these workforce development solutions, or problems, I should say. It is the solution. So I don't know if Martha or Emmanuel, you'd like to add anything as we close out?
Yeah, I have one more thing. As you guys were talking, this idea of partnerships. I've gone to meetings with economic development, and there's been an employer there who said, I had no idea that you guys were running apprenticeship programs. I might not be able to have an operator program this year, but you know what? I sit on a committee with 3 other people, and I know they're going to be really interested. Let me hook you up. I never give up an opportunity to attend and participate. I always learn something. The other thing, Sean, at the beginning, you said look to all the high schools. Don't just look at the technical schools, look at all the schools. I live in a very affluent district, and we advertise, that 99.9% of our students go on to 4-year educations. And I went and had like a roundtable discussion with their guidance department. And what they said to me was, we advertise that, but what we don't advertise is that only about 30% of them actually finish college. And so where do those other 70% of the kids go? And do I want to wait until they're 29 to get them into a registered apprenticeship program? No, I want them when they're 20 years old or 17 years old. And I can say to them, not only can I put you in a program, but I can help you get that terminal degree if that's where you want to go. We're going to participate. We're going to commit to you, and you're going to commit to us. So, never give up an opportunity to talk to someone, and never give up an opportunity to talk to people about the great work that goes on in the walls of your companies, because people don't know. You have amazing careers, you have great career pathways, and people need to know about the opportunities that exist right there in Idaho. Kids will want to stay. But if there isn't anything else, then I guess I will close out, and I want to just start by saying thank you so much for attending today's Apprenticeship Accelerator. The U.S. Department of Labor, the state of Idaho, all of us at JFF, we are all here to support you in developing and implementing your programs. If you have any other questions at all and you want to move forward with apprenticeship at your business, the state representatives are all listed on the board now. Gina Robinson, Ginny Boozer, and Michelle Stout. All of those state reps listed on the screen will connect you with the right individual or organization that you need to be connected to get you started. And again, thank you so very much for your time today and for your commitment to making Idaho's workforce stronger than ever, because without you as employers coming to the table and the educators supporting those employers, we can't make this happen. We're a group, we need to stand strong, and we're going to make it happen. Thank you so much, Sean, and thank you so much, Chat, for giving of your time today. We really appreciate it, and we're looking forward to seeing how this program grows as we move forward. I hope you all have a wonderful afternoon.
Yeah, thank you. Again, please feel free to reach out to Chet or I, as well as Gina and Ginny and Michelle. There was a question, are they assigned to regions? Yes, they are. And the Southeast, Chet, do you know which ones?
Jenny Boozer is the Southeast Idaho region.
Perfect.
Michelle is North Idaho, and Gina is she's the supervisor over all of Idaho, but she also oversees the Treasure Valley.
Great. All right. Well, thank you again. And you guys all have a great afternoon, and hopefully we can connect in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Emmanuel.
Thank you. You all take care. Bye now.
You too.
Thank you.